A very good morning to all the students. I hope every one of you is in your best health. So we were doing this chapter number 8, that is how do organisms reproduce, and we were into the topic of human reproductive system. So in the continuation with the topic of the female reproductive system, which we have done in our previous lecture, today we will be reading further. That is, in the female reproductive system, there are many main organs, which are ovaries, oviduct, uterus and vagina. We have done this already, but we are repeating again. So this is the diagram. Now ovaries are the primary reproductive organs in women, and they makes the cells which are either called as the eggs, ova, or we can also call them female gametes or sex cells. So these cells are produced here in the ovaries, and then this oviduct or the fallopian tube carries the ova or ovum to here to the uterus. So the fertilization actually takes place here in the oviduct, and then the zygote which is formed, it goes, embryo actually goes to the uterus and it attaches to the lining of the uterus. Now here is a cervix, organ called as cervix. This is a narrow opening which is connected to the uterus and the vagina. So this is a narrow opening into the another tube called vagina. So it is like an entry canal. Okay, so this vagina is used as the birth canal for the baby, and also it receives the sperms or the male gametes from the same place. Now after the eggs get fertilized, like the male cells it enters to this vagina and they get fertilized. So they get fertilized in the oviduct. So there is a term called fertilization. Now fertilization is the formation of ovum with the sperms or with the male gametes, and it takes place in the fallopian tube. So I would like to show diagram. Okay, so example here, this is a diagram. Now these are the ovaries. Okay, so ovaries will make the eggs. So egg will be released from one of the we are having two ovaries. So either one ovary will make eggs at one time, only one ovary will produce the eggs. So they just do this simultaneously. One time one ovary will make the eggs, and sometimes both the ovaries makes the eggs. So both the eggs get fertilized and then the twins are formed. So now the ovaries will make the egg, and when the egg will come here, the sperm will enter to the vagina, and they will flow or they will swim to the oviduct through this, and here the fertilization will occur. So after the fertilization, the zygote will be formed. So zygote is the first stage when the fertilization is done. So the zygote will be formed, and then this zygote, it travels from here to here, and it attaches to the uterus lining. Okay, so this is a diagram. So the sperms can go, because they are motile, they are having a tail so that they can swim through the oviduct. Okay, so now after the fertilization, there is a development of the embryo. So the first stage when the egg is fertilized with the sperm is known as the formation of zygote. But after the zygote is formed, then it develops into a hollow ball which is having many hundreds of cells, that is called as embryo, and it gets stick to the walls of the uterus lining. So after the zygote is formed, it will have the cell division, which is called as mitosis. So it will flow from this area and it will get attached to the uterus lining. So the embryo gets attached, or it embeds here, it just stick here to the soft and thick lining of the uterus. So uterus, every month the uterus prepare itself, the lining, it just forms the lining, it forms a bed. So all these are the blood vessels which makes an arrangement so that they can hold the egg, or they can hold the embryo, and when the embryo will develop into the fetus, it should be capable of holding the fetus for 9 months, because 9 months is the gestation period. So the uterus walls become thick. Okay, so that is the process of fertilization. So here the development of embryo, when the embryo gets developed, the first stage The first stage is that when the zygote is formed. So after the zygote is formed, there is the development in the zygote. It develops into the embryo, and when the embryo gets stuck to the uterus, that is called as the implantation. So the embedding of embryo in the thick lining of the uterus is called as implantation. Okay, so after the implantation is done, the embryo also needs some nutrition. So in order to provide a nutrition, there is a disc like special tissue which develops into the uterus wall, and they attaches to the embryo, which is called as placenta. So they somehow looks like this. Okay, so this is this diagram. So this is the placenta, which will provide all the nutrition, and this is the uterus. So this placenta will be attached to the baby. It is called as umbilical cord. Okay, so the baby will have all the nutrition with the help of the placenta, which is attached to the baby navel, which is called umbilical cord. So this umbilical cord helps to give all the nutrition, and this is the developing embryo, which is now become the fetus. So the placenta, after the implantation means when the embryo gets embedded into the thick lining of the uterus is known as implantation. So after the implantation is done, this like special tissue develops between the uterus or wall, or we can also say uterine wall, and the embryo, or we can call it a fetus, because fetus is something which is developed. So there is a difference between zygote, embryo and fetus, which I'll be telling you. So when the fetus it attaches to this uterus, so there is this like tissues which helps to provide all the nutrition. So they are connected through the mother and the baby through an umbilical cord, which give all the nutrition. So the main purpose of this is to exchange the nutrients, oxygen, and the waste products are transferred between the embryo and the mother during the phase of the pregnancy. So the time period from which the fertilization up to the birth of the baby, when the baby develops into a full-grown baby, when the zygote develops into the full-grown baby, is called as a gestation period. And the average gestation period in a human is about 9 months, or we can also tell it 38 weeks. So during this, the fetus grows into the fully matured baby. So here are the difference between embryo, zygote and fetus. A zygote is formed when the fusion of male and female gametes is done. So the first cell which is formed after the fusion is called as zygote. Then embryo is formed when there is a repeated cell division, when a single cell becomes a mass of cells, or when it is hundreds of cells, it's called embryo. It does not have any shape inside. And fetus is the developing embryo, or it is formed by the growth and development of the embryo. And other example of difference would be zygote is the beginning the formation of the baby. Embryo is an unborn baby in the uterus in the early stages, up to actually 8 weeks. Up to 8 weeks, it's called this embryo. And the fetus is an unborn baby in the uterus after 8 weeks. 8 weeks, it is termed as fetus. And zygote is a single cell. We all know that. It is very small. It is so small that it is like a dot, a grain of a sand. It can be small like that. Okay, embryo is a multicellular body, so it is also not much developed. It is a little bigger than zygote. And fetus is a multicellular body which has a developing hands, legs, eyes, etc. So these are the difference between zygote, embryo and fetus. Now menstruation. Now every time when the uterus prepare itself, sometimes what happen, the egg do not get fertilized. So when the eggs do not get fertilized, because when the egg will get fertilized, it will be forming zygote and then embryo and then fetus, and there will be a gestation phase and the baby will be born. But if there is no fertilization, that means there is no fusion of the male gametes to the female gametes, then what happens? Then there is a release of the ovum, which is called as the ovulation. So when during the ovulation there is no fusion of the gametes, So we have read in our previous lecture that during the time of the birth of a baby girl is having all the organs, but they are not fully developed. So they have a pair of ovaries in their body, and the ovaries have all the follicles. So the follicles start to develop into the egg when the girl reaches at the age of their puberty, and every month one follicle is released in the form of a mature ovum or a mature egg. So when these mature eggs get out of the ovaries, that is called as the release of an ovum, and that is called as the ovulation period. So in a normal healthy girl, the ovulation period is of 20 the ovulation takes place in 14 days, and it is the beginning of the menstruation cycle. So it is of 28 days or 30 something. So when there is no fusion of the gametes, the female start releasing the eggs, and when the eggs are not fertilized, they just get out of the body. And because the uterus prepare themselves for the fetus and for the embryo, so when there is no embryo, no nothing, so the line of the uterus which it has, the lining wall of the uterus which it has prepared itself for holding the baby for 9 months, it is no more required. So all the blood vessels and all the linings is dissolved, and it comes out of the body in the form of blood. So like example here, so this is a thickening of uterus, as you can see here. So the uterus makes itself thick because it has to prepare itself for the, if there is fertilization, so there will be a development of the embryo here, because embryo will embed somewhere here. So it has to hold, it has to give all the nutrition. So there are a lot of mesh of blood vessels here, but when it is not required, then the lining of the uterus starts breaking, and because there are a lot of blood vessels in it, so when it just breaks down, so the bleeding occurs, and it is called as the menstrual cycle. So the breakdown and the removal of the inner and thick and soft lining of the uterus along with the blood vessels from the vaginal bleeding is called as the menstruation. Okay, so this is when there is no fertilization. Now birth control methods. So government also follow many birth control methods, because birth control methods are very essential, as they helps to get rid of diseases. They also get rid of unwanted population. So this is there are some methods which are being used in order to prevent the population or the birth. So there are 3 methods, that is barrier methods, chemical method, and surgical method. So birth control is also important because the population is increasing. So because the nation is big and country has to supply sufficient food resources and then the facilities in order to curb the poverty, so it would be better if everyone would make a family planning, and they control the birth of the young ones, unwanted young ones. So in order to control that, these methods are used, which is barrier method, chemical method, and surgical method. So first is the barrier method. So this barrier method, barrier means having a protection, a barrier. So the main thing is that a device which is called as condom is used on the penis, so that the sperms do not get entered to the female body, and they do not get fused with the egg. So when there is no fusion, no fertilization occurs, and then when there is no fertilization, there is no pregnancy. So it helps to avoid the pregnancy and to control the birth. So it is used, and condoms and diaphragm this is for the female and this is for the male. So it protects from the pregnancy, and there is another important for this is that it protects the individuals from the sexually transmitted diseases such as gonorrhea, syphilis, and AIDS. So these two are curable diseases, but this is a very deadly disease which is not cured at all. So this barrier method using condoms and diaphragm also prevents the individuals from these diseases such as bacterial and viral diseases, and also they control the pregnancy. So now next is chemical method. So chemical method is the method which is used by taking oral pills. They are also called as oral contraceptive pills. So the pills helps in the they just uh, they just stop the production of the eggs from the ovaries. So when there are no production of the eggs or no release of the eggs from the ovaries, so there will be no fusion and no fertilization of the gametes. So when there is no egg, so the sperms will get wasted, so there will be no fertilization. So it also helps from the pregnancy, but it just helps from the pregnancy. It does not prevent the individuals from the STD, just sexually transmitted diseases. So since this chemical method can also disbalance the female hormones, so for a long run it is not safe. This is also one of the method of the preventing the birth control, preventing the birth of the babies. Next is intrauterine contraceptive device. So this is not used these days. It was used in the earlier period, which is called IUCD. So the main device is used as copper T because it's made of copper, so it is called as copper T. This was very effective to prevent the pregnancy because it is used by the it is done by the doctors or by nurses. So it is placed inside the uterus so that the lining, because we have read that the embryo which develops, it get embedded into uterus, so it avoids the embryo to get stuck to the uterus, and then the embryo is released from the vagina. So there is no development of the embryo because embryo does not get embedded in the uterus, because copper T will prevent it to get stick to the lining of the uterus. So there is no implantation of the fertilized egg in the uterus. When there is no implantation, so we have read about implantation. I hope you remember, just now I've taught you about the implantation. What is implantation? The embedding of the embryo in the thick lining of the uterus is called as implantation. So when there is no implantation, the embryo will go out of the body and there is no development of the fetus and no pregnancy, no baby birth. Then this surgical method. So surgical method is birth control. Surgical method, there are two types of methods which are available for male and female both. So in the case of males, it is called as vasectomy. So in this vasectomy, the surgery is done, and in the male it is done, and the vas difference is tied or it is cut so that it does not connect with the tube, seminiferous tubule which join with the penis. So when it will not join with the tract from which the sperms are released from the body. So when there is no sperm, there is no fertilization. So in the vasectomy, the by the surgical operation, both the ends of the vas difference are cut or tied properly so that there is no release of the sperms. Okay, so in the case of females, it's called as tubectomy. So this tubectomy is done in the females. So the same process, that they just tie the fallopian tube so that there is no ovum. No ovum can enter to the oviduct. So the ovaries will make the eggs, but they will not go to the oviduct. So this is called as tubectomy. So these are the surgical methods. So basically there are three methods, which is barrier method, which is by the use of condoms, and chemical method by oral pills, and surgical method. So from all these methods, this is the best method which prevents individual from the STD, that is sexually transmitted diseases. So the next is the female feticide. So in our country, this is very common that the killing of the unborn girl child is done. So the killing of the unborn girl child is called as female feticide, when it is the girl child is killed inside the mother's womb. So that is because fetus is killed, so that is because the girl is not born, so it is still fetus, so it's called feticide. So it reduces the number of girls they just avoid the girls to take birth, because in society still there are some laws that if there is any problem, normally if there is any problem, the surgical operations can be done and the pregnancy can be terminated after the 8 weeks of conception. So but what people do, they play with the laws and they just get the ultrasound done, and when they get to know it is a girl child, they just go for an abortion and they kill the girl child in the mother's womb. So it is unlawful these days, and government are applying a very strict rule so that there is no ultrasound done, so that the sex of an unborn child cannot be determined, because when people will know that they are having a baby girl, they don't want it, and then they will get an abortion done, which is called as female feticide. So we should government is encouraging people to have a girl child, because when there are a lot of killing of the female feticides, so the ratio of the male female is getting disbalanced and the girl ratio is declining, which is not good, because girls are also a part of the society, so we have to respect them. Now next is STD. STD is again the sexually transmitted diseases which are caused by the sexual contact with an infected person. So basically two types of diseases, the bacterial disease and viral disease. So bacterial diseases are gonorrhea and syphilis, which are curable. They cause burning sensation in the urination, and even there is a urethral discharge which contains some pus, and it gets very problematic, and sores in the genitals are there. And the other one is viral disease, AIDS and warts. So warts is curable, but AIDS is not curable, which is caused by the HIV virus. Okay, so these are the diseases which are caused by the sexually transmitted diseases called by the sexual contact. So this is the chapter. Now it is finished. I hope you understood the chapter. So by the end of the chapter, you have to do question and answer. If you have any problem, you can ask so that we can help. This is an important topic, and every time I have seen a lot of questions comes to the board exam from this this topic of the birth control and the fertilization. So please read carefully so that everything should be clear. Even the diseases are being asked many times, like what are the bacterial diseases and what are the viral diseases. You have to learn. It's very simple. You can go through your book, and that is it. Okay, so till then, till the next lecture, please study and do your work and take care. Thank you.